Rees Moggs.
Sir David, I will not be voting for Article 7 because I think Article 7 is a mistake that it puts into... Thank you so much. I'm extremely grateful for Amendment 7 because it's a mistake. It calls for legislation to be put in afterwards, which is a very unusual thing for a bill to do, I believe unprecedented. And I think that if people don't like Clause 9, they should vote against Clause 9 rather than putting in this unusual amendment. But I do want to make it clear that I accept very much the good faith of those who are arguing for it. Those of us who opposed the government when it was very pro-European should not criticise members like my right honourable friend and learned friend, the member for Beaconsfield, or as Disraeli pronounced it, Beaconsfield, when they decide that they should take the reverse position from the one we took in previous years. What they do is completely reasonable, and I personally have my doubts about Clause 9 anyway, because I think it goes further than is strictly necessary for the purposes of the bill, and I feel that having a clause within a bill that allows the bill itself to be amended is going a little bit too far, which was why I was reassured by what the Minister said from the dispatch box about having a motion that would be brought forward before any of the statutory instruments under Clause 9 were brought into effect. I think that is a generous concession to the government, and I give way to my right honourable friend.
Very grateful to my honourable friend. Would he agree with me that, therefore, there is a quite natural solution, which is to put the assurance that was given from the dispatch box on the face of this clause when it comes back at report?
My right honourable friend's speech earlier on today was absolutely brilliant and got to the heart of all these matters, and indeed provided a solution at the end of it, which is that there should be a good-spirited compromise, giving some faith to the government, which I think it is reasonable for members of Parliament to do, but recognising that it is better to have a clear answer at report stage that covers the whole problem, rather than putting an amendment in that actually is constitutionally abnormal. And I don't think we should put amendments down that are constitutionally abnormal. And I do follow the argument of the Minister that there are circumstances when Clause 9 could be useful. And I do see that if an agreement comes relatively late on, that there will be an urgency in getting statutory instruments presented. There will also be a prorogation before May 2019, so there will be delay potentially in the proceedings on the withdrawal and implementation bill that might require urgent action, which, if we have passed a motion legislatively required, accepting the statutory instruments that are then proposed, both maintains parliamentary control and gives the government the flexibility that it is likely to need. And this becomes very significant because as we leave, we want to have the continuity of legislation, the clarity. The date has been set and there's been debate on this. The key here is that the date is set by previous decisions of Parliament. It is no sense an erosion of parliamentary sovereignty because it is set out under the bill passing Article 50, now the Act passing Article 50, it is set out by the Act incorporating the Lisbon Treaty into UK law. So those timeframes were voluntary acts of Parliament to require things to be done by the 29th of March 2019. It therefore follows that there is some pressure on time, and therefore for the government to ask for that level of flexibility is perfectly reasonable. And there is then the issue, which I will conclude on, of the vote at the end, the final meaningful vote. And I thought the honourable member for the Rhondda, as so often, made a very elegant point about it being a metaphysical decision for us about the meaning of meaning. But the issue there is that Her Majesty's government has already promised that we will have a vote on the deal before the European Parliament does. But there is no deal until the European Parliament has voted. The European Parliament has to agree to the deal as part of the Article 50 package. It is enhanced qualified majority vote, subject to the approval of the European Parliament. But we have already been promised a vote before it is voted on by the European Parliament. Of course, I'll give way to my honourable friend.
possibly right, but my understanding is if you look at the definition of withdrawal agreement, it clearly says whether ratified or not. So we don't have to follow the European Parliament. But unless we get a meaningful vote, they may well end up being able to vote on something, frankly, that we won't.
Honourable friend, but the government has already said we will have a chance to vote on it before the European Parliament. Well, that vote must, by its nature, be meaningful. As we know, it is very easy to put down a meaningful vote. We just make it an humble address, and then it is binding on Her Majesty's government, and that is quite clear from all previous parliamentary procedure and constitutional procedure. So we can engineer a meaningful vote, even if the government is trying to be a bit slippery, which I happen to doubt very much, because I think Her Majesty's government would never dream of being slippery, wouldn't know how to be slippery. It's hard to think in the whole of history of a government being slippery. And that, therefore, in the whole schedule leading to the ratification, the approval of the withdrawal agreement, there is a requirement for a vote in this House. There is also a requirement now agreed with the European Union that there will be a withdrawal and implementation bill, and I'm sorry the honourable gentleman for Nahilling and Anyar is getting impatient, but this is a very important matter. And so the rights of Parliament will absolutely and clearly be preserved, and I hope that Her Majesty's Government will listen to my right honourable friend, the member for West Dorset, because then I think there is a solution that everybody can be happy with.
Yeah.